they're building this one building, but it's a national museum in the national capital. There are a lot of things that come along with it, so it's an epic proposition, it's an epic story. You're building a museum for another 100 years.
The main heritage elements that we're restoring are the things that essentially make the most important character of the building.
Renovating an old house, if anyone has done it, will tell you it's just an absolute nightmare. Well, here, multiply that by 1,000.
That's a challenge, there's no question about it, but it's a particularly exciting time. In the end, you've got this whole environment that comes together.
All the people who work here, they're not here because of the building. They're here because of the mission, and that's what will make the building come alive.
The Canadian Museum of Nature in Ottawa has been in existence for more than 150 years. Since 1912, the museum has been housed in the Victoria Memorial Museum building, one of the most historically important buildings in the nation. This imposing Edwardian-era building is often referred to as the Castle because of its impressive stone facade. Over time, the museum has become internationally known for its research, from discovering new species to doing leading work in biodiversity. But its exhibits have also delighted and entertained visitors for generations.
Mes fils aiment beaucoup l'ambiance, les animaux et tout ça. L'étage des dinosaures, c'est vraiment l'étage préféré des enfants.
It's always nice to come and see all the animals. It gives him a chance to see really how big the animals are as opposed to seeing them in a book.
My son's only 4.5, but we come about 2-3 times a year. Yeah, he really enjoys it. He got one of those little sets where you can go and chase insects, so now at least someone can teach him more.
Visitors haven't always been able to explore the natural sciences with such exciting interactive experiences. In the past, most of the museum's collections were hidden away in vaults. It existed mainly to collect and preserve specimens for research and for posterity.
Today, we are really a very different kind of institution. We're very much more of a dynamic social hub within a community. We want to bring our collections out and to be able to use them as examples.
Today, the museum has a larger role. The museum educates us about vital environmental issues and our relationship to the natural world around us. The Canadian Museum of Nature began as a sparkle in the eye of geologist Sir William Logan. During his lifetime as Director of the Geological Survey of Canada, his field parties managed to collect over 2,000 boxes of raw scientific material ranging from plants, rocks, fossils to cultural artifacts. He campaigned hard for a science museum to display these treasures. By the turn of the century, the nation's capital was growing rapidly. Prime Minister Sir Wilfrid Laurier's grand vision was to make Ottawa a Washington of the North, which would include an impressive national museum. David Ewart, born in Scotland in 1843, was arguably the most prolific senior architect of public works in Ottawa at the time. As the chief Dominion architect, he was given the prestigious job of designing the new National Museum.
Ewart had as his model our Parliament buildings, but he was also sent on a tour of Europe to learn what was the latest in museums, and came back and designed this museum in a neo-Gothic style. And this particular style is very much inspired by Windsor Castle, Hampton Court in England.
Construction started in 1905 and took 5 years to complete. The final cost was just under $1 million, an enormous sum at the time.
So it was a very ambitious project for Canada, and for Ewart, it was kind of the biggest building that he had designed up until that point.
But before the work had even been finished, fissures began to appear in the building's heavy stone walls. Some workers were afraid of entering the basement, where strange noises were heard. It was said that broken stone flew like bullets from the massive stone foundations. Despite these problems, the elegant museum building opened to the public in 1912. There were display cases stocked with minerals, birds, and fossil specimens in the lower galleries. Scientists worked on the collections and did research on the upper 2 floors. In its first year, the museum attracted over 15,000 visitors. Early on, the museum became important to the nation for other reasons. In February 1916, a huge fire destroyed the Parliament buildings. The government was relocated to the museum building for the next 4 years. It was also where Sir Wilfrid Laurier lay in state when he died in 1919. The museum building has had many tenants over the years. Besides Sir William Logan's natural history specimens, it has been home to the country's priceless collections of fine art and cultural artifacts. By 1990, these other collections had all moved to their own new museums, leaving the Canadian Museum of Nature to itself. But by then, this Ottawa landmark was showing its age, and behind its beautiful facade, a myriad of flaws and shortcomings lay hidden. This historical building had to be rescued from an uncertain future to fulfill its role as a modern museum.
The building had been challenging as a museum facility for at least 2 or 3 decades, but it is Canada's first national museum. It was built as a part of the building of the nation. There was really no way this building would be torn down.
A pivotal moment came in 1997 when astronaut Roberta Bondar presented to potential sponsors a series of large-format photographs of national parks.
The sponsor walked up to have a closer look, and a piece of sludge fell off the ceiling right into this $15,000 photograph and this creation of Dr. Bondar's. So it just kind of took my breath away and brought a number of things into focus about the building, about the limitations. Within 2 months, the government had authorized the funding that we needed in order to really study what the building would need.
A team of top architects was hired to create a complete renewal plan for the museum building.
I can tell you we've got a lot of work ahead of us, and I know you guys are excited as I am to show what we can do with this historic building and how we introduce the modern interventions that will make it really sing.
Studies showed there were many more serious problems than the original builders could have imagined. Without considering where it was built, Ewart had placed this massive stone structure on a deep bed of Leda clay, a remnant of the ancient Champlain Sea which once covered the Ottawa Valley.
The engineers designed a very heavy building, and as it was being built, it was beginning to sink. And Ewart, it appears, was in a certain amount of denial. As an architect, I can empathize with him, but the building ended up sinking about 1/2 meter in the first 3, 4, 5 years, which is a lot of sinking, and the outcome of that, there were huge cracks in the building, and our beautiful tower designed by Ewart began to pull away from the building, and within a few years after it was completed, they had to dismantle it. That's something that I'm sure Ewart was very disappointed in.
After barely 5 years, the tower had to come down.
Because it's sitting on about 30 meters of clay. From the very beginning, the museum has had inadequate foundations. When we opened up that wall at the foundation level, the footings were actually broken. This is one of the first times I've seen foundations just break. And it was dramatic. Where the elevators are going up through the building, the walls on either side had giant cracks that were 1 foot wide. That was probably one of the most interesting sort of engineering challenges, was to how do we support new construction there when we already know we have inadequate foundations. The floor at the ground floor of the museum had huge deformations exhibited in it, and we had to sort of build a new flat floor over the existing bent structure to create a new level surface.
Added to the foundation problems, Ottawa lies right in the middle of a seismic activity zone. In layman's terms, earthquake territory. But the building was not conceived with any seismic precautions in mind.
This building originally was built before there was any requirement to resist earthquakes. We studied all kinds of options to reinforce the building, but of course it's a heritage building, so in the end our solution was to add a steel structure on the inside of the building that wouldn't be obvious from the outside, but is certainly obvious on the inside if you know where to look. It involved 2,000 tons of steel reinforcing coming into the building, bolted to the exterior walls, new connections to all the floors, and a substantial effort. It's like a skeleton that is just inside the skin of the building, and it carries all of the lateral loads down to foundations.
The work needed to reinforce the building and bring everything up to modern standards was estimated to take 5 years. Big plans were in the works. Reinforcing the structure, adding a unique climate control system, preserving and restoring all the beautiful heritage elements, redesigning the interior spaces to make them more functional, and creating a totally new structure, the lantern on the front of the building. This last feature would give improved access to all floors of the museum. The cost for all this work? Just over $200 million. And this was just for the building itself. The museum would have to find other funds to fill the rebuilt galleries with new modern exhibitions. Construction was scheduled to happen in 2 stages. First would be the renewal of the West Wing containing the fossil, bird, and mammal galleries, and the construction of the new South Wing. Stage 2 would see the rebuilding of the East Wing for the new Earth and Water galleries, as well as renovation of the atrium and construction of the new lantern structure. The museum was last renovated in the late 1960s, which caused it to be closed for 5 years. But this was not an option the museum wanted to consider this time. The potential for losing its visitor base by closing was too high a cost, and so the decision was taken to keep sections of the museum open throughout the entire renewal process. But this was to create special challenges for both the construction team and the museum staff.
Lorsqu'il y avait des gens qui occupaient une partie du bâtiment, il fallait sécuriser, c'est-à-dire qu'il fallait avoir des escaliers de secours, des choses du genre. Alors c'était assez compliqué à faire et ça a eu 2 effets importants, à part de compliquer notre ouvrage. C'est que ça a fait que le projet a duré plus longtemps et ça a fait aussi que ça a coûté plus cher parce que ça durait plus longtemps.
When we first started the renewal project, it was a lovely, grand, old building, but it was not a functional museum. If you look at the pictures of this museum 100 years ago, when it first opened, it's a very spacious and almost an elegant feel to it, but it has none of the kind of immersive experience that we give visitors today. We know that people come here not just to learn stuff, but they come here in part to be entertained, and it's a combination of those 2 things that makes the visitor experience worthwhile.
The museum staff had to prepare the Mammal Gallery for the move from the East to the West Wing. Exciting new exhibits and displays were being planned, but there was one element that staff and visitors alike were unanimous in wanting to keep for the new Mammal Gallery: the dioramas. Throughout the 1960s, artists Clarence Telanius and Hugh Monahan created the backgrounds for a series of extraordinarily realistic dioramas. Their work captured not just a moment in nature, but also a museum exhibition style unique to that era.
These dioramas are, to our museum, a national treasure. In terms of the scope and the scale of dioramas in Canada, this is pretty much the largest collection. They were created to demonstrate to the public environments that typically they wouldn't have access to unless they traveled. What we're doing is documenting the current layout of the exhibition, and once it's documented, then we can start stripping away the components. There are hundreds of little pieces of information that have to be accumulated because We have to put these back together again.
Our initial planning did not require the movement of any large exhibition components. But as the project developed, it became clear that we were going to have to move everything.
Moving the dioramas was a monumental task. A temporary bridge was built across the central atrium, linking the east and west wings, allowing the dioramas to be moved from one side of the museum to the other.
And in the end, and this was the heartbreaking part for me, we had to cut them. We cut them up in several pieces, each one of them, and put them back together, piece by every little piece. Every little piece of grass you see in the foreground was taken out, cleaned, sometimes repainted, and put back in, piece by piece. Then we had to overpaint them and try and hide all the cuts that we made in them. So far, we've been successful. It's the kind of decision that we had to make in order to make the project work.
With the dioramas as the centerpiece for the new Mammals Gallery, the bird and fossil galleries were also completely renewed. The new displays are interactive, interpretive, and immersive, all hallmarks of the modern museum visitor's experience. While visitors enjoyed the newly reopened West Wing, work was going on behind the scenes in the closed East Wing and the atrium.
It's 15 mils. I believe it's imported from Italy. We are actually laying the mosaic upside down. This is the finished side. You can see the paper on top. Once it's laid, we have to go back and wet the sheets and then make sure it's soft enough to peel, that you don't want to be lifting the mosaic. It's meticulous. It takes a bit of time. It's very unusual. This is probably, for me, honestly, it'd be once in a lifetime opportunity to do some sort of work like this. It's not something you do every day, and it has to be done right the first time, and there's no two ways about it. Once it's completed, the floor, it will be quite exquisite. It'll be a very nice floor.
It's incredibly rewarding to come into an old building, see the problems, and find all these beautiful, beautiful materials. Many of them are hidden behind carpet and finishes and all kinds of things that people have done over time. And to go there and lift a piece of carpet and find the original ceramic tiles from the turn of the century looking absolutely splendid, to be able to find those materials and restore them and bring back the life to the building that it had at the turn of the century is what I really, really love. As you can see, we have heritage marble, we have heritage glass, we have heritage stone, we have heritage plaster, and the plaster which in the end will also be painted, so that in the end you're doing the work in the right order and you end up with a fully finished piece of music or symphony by the time we're done. How are the guys trying to make the new cove moldings and things to match the existing moldings?
A little difficult. A lot of people don't do this anymore. Mm-hmm. It's a lost trade, so it's hard to find people that do it.
You have a template, I think,
have a template
that you made to match the original.
Yeah, we strike it through with the mold.
And what happens if it doesn't match when you get to the other side?
Then we have a problem.
Well, you're doing a beautiful job.
Among the building's many heritage elements are the spectacular themed stained glass windows. They had to be carefully taken out of their frames, cleaned and restored.
Yes, it hasn't seen the light of day for a lot of years. So, first things first is it's heading for the bath. As found condition. It's still covered with all the original dust. You should see him do the dishes.
Yeah.
It's still in reasonable shape. Mm. Beautiful.
Very nice.
Oh, yes.
All of the stained glass windows have a historic natural motif, so they all have birds and fauna and animals in their stained glass motifs. They are really very, very beautiful pieces, and some of them have actually been hiding for the last 40, 50 years where you couldn't actually see them, and we discovered them when we opened up ceiling spaces. Overall, the pieces are in amazing shape, and they're very, very happy to be able to restore them.
Examining, dismantling, and restoring the original architectural elements revealed startling differences between the way construction crews work then and now. A century ago, architect David Ewart needed just a few plans to design and describe the entire building. This modern renewal has generated thousands of drawings and reports detailing every minute aspect of the building's structure and its improvements.
It's a very unique project. There's lots of different elements to this job that you would never see on most typical jobs. It's more than just a renovation because of the type of building we're dealing with and the very extensive work that we're performing inside this building. It's been probably the most challenging project that I've worked on. Probably nobody will ever say they've worked on a job like this again.
You know, everybody has a slightly different interest, but yet we all have to work together towards a goal. The construction manager wants to build things quickly and easily. The consultant wants a certain aesthetic, and that sometimes can be more difficult to construct. And the client wants a building that's functional and works for them. And those three things can be sometimes diametrically opposed. Sometimes they go smoothly together, but often we have to sit and hash out what are we actually going to do to solve a particular problem so that all three requirements can be met.
The renovation project would see up to 200 people on site each day, with dozens more behind the scenes, all working together to make the museum's May 2010 launch. The scheduled handover to the museum is fast approaching, giving exhibition designers and technicians the enormous job of creating the galleries in time for the entire museum's grand reopening. Staff from the Earth Gallery are assembling a variety of stones, crystals, and gems from the museum's vast collection for their new exhibition.
On a environ 50 000 spécimens dans la collection. Elle est assez bien cotée internationalement et nationalement aussi. On est vraiment à la dernière phase là, de la sélection des spécimens. C'est notre 12e vitrine qui est la dernière qu'on établit pour la Galerie de la Terre qui va s'ouvrir en mai prochain. Ça, c'était Jean Minerai, plus typique d'une réaction qui s'est faite entre la copyrite et la roche encaissante. Je me suis dit que le public va aimer ça.
Oui, c'est une scientifique et esthétique. Comme ça, on en a pour tous les types de publics parce que, bien sûr, il y a des gens qui viennent ici, qui connaissent rien des minéraux, mais qui peuvent les apprécier pour leur beauté. Puis nous, ce qu'on veut faire, c'est les amener un peu plus loin. Donc, chaque vitrine va être accompagnée d'étiquettes intelligentes. C'est tout simplement des écrans tactiles sur lesquels les visiteurs vont pouvoir retrouver des informations supplémentaires sur les différents minéraux. Il y a plusieurs étapes qui restent encore à faire.
The museum is also designing a brand new exhibition, the Water Gallery. So its designers have to create this new exhibition from the ground up. This gallery will explore water in all its forms and the incredible variety of life within it. Its centerpiece will be the imposing skeleton of an adolescent blue whale.
You know, this whale is huge. It's almost more than 65 feet long. It dominates the room. Everything is relative to it. The sight lines, the traffic routes, where we can place media is all going to be relative to the whale. So, you know, we're not placing the whale in a gallery, we're building the gallery around the whale.
Knowing exactly what this collection of bones will look like once it's put together is far from obvious. 3D computer models were created to test different skeleton orientations. These allow the museum staff to decide which position would best suit the layout of the finished gallery. This skeleton, the length of a tractor trailer, has been stored in the museum's collection since 1983. But before this kit of parts can be assembled, hundreds of liters of congealed oil need to be drained from its bones. Like the museum building itself, the whale skeleton is undergoing a thorough process of renovation, restoration, and preservation.
Here, a lot of the bones have developed cracking over the years. What we're trying to do is give them enough strength and durability to last a very long time.
But the building in its present condition is not able to protect the new displays, nor allow visiting exhibitions to rare and delicate specimens to be shown. The building's internal structure would first need to be radically modified, allowing for the first time full control of its temperature and humidity.
Vous voyez que le bâtiment ici, c'est un vieux mur. C'est un mur qui a une centaine d'années. Il n'y a pas d'isolation, il n'y a pas de coupe-vapeur, rien de ça. Et il fallait faire des galeries à l'intérieur avec un taux d'humidité qui était beaucoup plus élevé. Ce qu'on a fait, c'est que vous voyez ici le mur intérieur puis le mur extérieur, il y a un espace qui parcourt toute la périphérie du bâtiment, chacun des étages. Dynamic Buffer Zone. En français, c'est une zone tampon sur laquelle on vient avoir une température qui est constante, qui n'est pas trop humide et qui permet d'avoir des galeries qui ont vraiment un taux d'humidité puis une température qui est différente. C'est presque comme une chambre blanche, un laboratoire, des choses du genre.
An added bonus from the building's redesign was an addition of a huge garage door and loading dock in the back, so that big items like the dinosaur models don't need to come in the front door anymore.
For the first time coming into this building, we can now create a proper path to actually manage large-scale parcels, large-scale exhibits, large-scale specimens, and bring them right into the building. It has made such an enormous difference for the kinds of exhibits and the kinds of stories the museum can tell today.
Nearby, the live animal specialists are getting acquainted with what will soon be the museum's newest residents. The Water Gallery team is beginning to fill their brand new space. One of the prominent new features is an aquarium teeming with local river life.
This is the first time we've ever invested in such a large-scale aquarium. And they did a beautiful job, actually. The gravel is milled from local rock. And that wood has been built and molded to be the same as a cedar root that you would find around our river. At any given time, the goal is to have at least 10 species in the tank, whether they're also predator-prey issues. That number is going to fluctuate. So it's been a real learning process in where to find the fish, how to collect the fish. These kind of fish are not located in any sort of stores. We don't have a Fish R Us for native local species, especially in Canada. So everything has to be wild caught by permit. I think one of the nicest things that's going to happen is that the visitors are actually going to see the fish in the tank and be able to go to an identification panel and go, that's what that is. I've always wondered what that is.
With the gallery teams hard at work creating the new exhibitions, another part of the architectural team is working on a modern solution to an old problem. Perhaps the most visible evidence of the museum's rebirth has been the mysterious new glass structure rising on the front. In Ewart's original design, a large stone tower formed a focal point for the front of the building. The entrance has remained without a tower since 1915, but beyond aesthetic considerations, the museum has a very practical need for a new structure to be built on the truncated base.
When Ewart designed this building, only the ground and second floor were to be publicly accessible, and the third and the fourth floor were for museum administrators, curators, exhibition designers, etc. And so the whole impetus for re-engaging Ewart's work, the vestibule, and building in that area had to do with being able to create a place where the public circulation could be taken up from level 2 to 3 to 4. So our analysis of the building called for using the heritage atrium as a kind of central focal point for all the orientation of moving around this building. And then I said, well, what if we still make something that sits on top as we were doing before, but just a little more modest, but still commanding? And let's not call it a tower, let's call it, and someone said, why don't we call it a lantern?
The architectural team devised a much lighter glass structure, incorporating a butterfly staircase. The new design was approved to be built, but one of the criteria was that the new addition could not add extra weight to the building or risk repeating history. The solution? A novel concept of suspending the glass from a steel frame, transferring the weight to the rest of the building, and anchoring to a new floating foundation built beneath the existing structure. The process of creating the lantern was an incredible design and engineering feat that required some very special construction materials to pull it off. 160 panels of triple glazed glass were crafted at Pilkington Glass Works in England and then transported to Ottawa. While hanging the glass from the top of the structure solved one issue, it created another. Some of the panels broke either during the long trip from overseas or while they were being attached to the lantern's framework, adding further delays to an already tight schedule.
The glass people were on the site last week. As you know, there's 6 pieces of broken glass. They want to send it all to Pilkington in England and work together on a solution. As of this morning, actually, they're going to replace the 4 panes that broke earlier.
And then bumping up against our opening in May, we're going to need a plan B, of course.
Well, the plan B is take the inner piece out.
Would there be an issue, though, if we had to open with just one piece of glass and the interior piece of glass?
No, because we'd have double glazing left,
So
and that's quite normal.
Yeah.
But the lantern solution presented many advantages despite the construction difficulties.
I mean, this is one of the most interesting moments in the entire experience of the museum because this is right at the interface between the top of the vestibule of David Ewart and the beginning, let's say, of the glass portion of the lantern where history meets the new architecture and where the museum meets the city. You can see that eventually the butterfly stair ascends in this kind of scissor-like composition to the point where the landings at the top allow you to look outside the museum into the city, and some of the mid-landings allow you to look back into the heritage atrium. So we see this space as being a kind of gallery where the story of the lantern and the architecture of the lantern and the tower that was here before are all told in a way that people can understand the nature of construction, the nature of architecture, and their relationship to, one of the great heritage buildings in the country.
Some people will look at it and say, from an aesthetic perspective, it is an architectural statement, and it reflects a modern interpretation of what the original intent of the architect might be. But really, it's a signal that there is a new museum. I think everybody will have a different interpretation, and I hope that it's something that people talk about for many years to come.
Well, I think it's innovative because it's an old, beautiful building, but with the new piece looks sort of spruces up and again adds a little zest to it.
I think it's cool to mix the modern with the old style of the museum because it's very castle-like, the museum, and it's always been that way, and then they've added the nice glass structure in the front there, so I think it's kind of cool to mix both.
While the glass installers work on the lantern, the museum has set its grand opening for International Biodiversity Day in May. Inside the museum, work on the new galleries is reaching the final stage.
Je suis très content de la sélection qu'on a faite. Je suis très content aussi de l'apparence de chaque vitrine. Je pense que les spécimens en soi sont des très beaux spécimens, mais les vitrines les mettent en évidence énormément. Je préfère beaucoup les spécimens qui viennent du Canada et du Québec en particulier. Donc la vitrine des roches alcalines avec prédominance des spécimens du Mont-Saint-Hilaire et la vitrine des roches fiolitiques d'asbestos en particulier. Aussi, c'est des spécimens de très haute qualité qui sont canadiens en plus. Par contre, je pourrais dire que chacune des vitrines est exceptionnelle. Elles sont toutes très belles. Cette pièce de joaillerie de Mme Josely de Toronto est composée de diamants canadiens et d'or canadien, en plus de saphir et de rubis. Et c'est une pièce extraordinaire à observer aussi. Pour le grand public, sûrement, vont apprécier. On va déplacer les spécimens de la tablette du haut quelque peu pour permettre à ce spécimen d'être intégré à la dernière minute, mais quand même, ça vaut la peine.
With only some cosmetic finishing touches still to be done, the new Earth Gallery is nearly ready for its first visitors. The Water Gallery looks just as its designers had envisioned. Exciting new displays and restored specimens are taking their places around the centerpiece of the gallery, the magnificent blue whale exhibit.
It was very busy today. We had a lot of the usual contractors been here for weeks on end, but we had some special ones come in today as well. We had the leatherback turtle installed. This is a beautiful model of a superlative animal that's one of our top performers as a marine reptile. And we also had the hydrothermal vent diorama come in, which is a very complicated depiction of the extraordinary life that's living it. It's a very exciting time for us right now. It's sort of like Christmas, you know, we've all been shopping and it's all coming in now. We're very comfortable that we'll have everything in place for May 22nd.
As construction nears its end, the building is being brought to life. Every system in the building is being tested.
Testing 1, 2. This is a test of the PA system for the fire alarm.
Like a living body, each part in this massive building must work with the others in perfect synchronicity.
I think people are quite happy to see it coming to an end, but quite pleased with the results that we're seeing around us.
Je pense que ça va être un succès. D'abord, nous, on va être fiers, mais je pense que quand les gens vont rentrer ici, ils vont être surpris parce qu'ils ne vont pas s'attendre à ce qu'ils vont voir. Vous avez vu la lanterne, mais c'est plus que ça. C'est toutes les galeries, les espaces comme ici. C'est vraiment spécial. Ça fait des beaux environnements.
What people won't see is all of the work that went behind the scenes. I would love people to walk into the space and just look around and say it's absolutely beautiful, but hopefully they'll all wonder what on earth the big deal was.
Now, I've always asked myself, what would David Ewart think of what we're doing with his building 100 years after he designed and built it? I'd really like to have a conversation with him right now if that was possible.
And now, at last, the big day has arrived.
I am deliriously happy to see the museum finally occupied by the public. It's a dream come true, really. And I think, David, you're seeing people here today taking over this public monument, this National Museum, would have made him feel really great. I can't prove it, but I'm quite sure it would have been that way.
It's just truly overwhelming to see something that you've worked on for so long and so hard with so many people come together like this. You know, the people I talked to today, they all talk about their memories that they have of this museum and the memories that they had as a child coming here and how they're bringing their children back. And for us, that is just so touching because that's exactly where we wanted it to be.
What we were building, what we were creating or reconstructing was the Museum of Natural History for the 21st century. And I think we've done that. This museum has so many stories to tell, and to be able to observe people in numbers chatting with each other as they stand in front of these wonderful dioramas or in front of the 65-foot whale in the new water gallery. We couldn't ask for more.
Of course, you see it under construction, you wonder what's going on exactly, but when you're actually inside, it's an absolute marvel.
It's really great to see so many people here too, enjoying the science and everything there is to see, so it looks fantastic.
I think it's really child-friendly, like everything is at an eye level, everything is very nicely explained. It's so open and airy and light, it's a very inviting place.
I came here with a very deep feeling about what national museums could do and could be for Canada. What is so fundamentally wonderful here is that we've been given the opportunity to make that real.